Every morning, the small cafe opened its doors to the quiet hum of the town waking up. The sunlight poured gently through the windows, making the wooden tables and chairs shine. The waitress, who had been working there for some years, knew the rhythm of the cafe like the back of her hand. She moved with a quiet efficiency, pouring coffee, refilling sugar containers, and placing fresh pastries on display. The regulars had their spots, their usual orders, and they never hesitated to smile or nod at her as they passed. Among these familiar faces, there was one who always caught her attention. A quiet girl, barely noticeable to most people, sat in the corner every morning. She didn't speak much, and she often kept her eyes on a small notebook she carried. Sometimes she would glance around, but mostly she stayed absorbed in her own little world. Her hands fidgeted with the pen, and she seemed nervous when she looked up at the other patrons or the waitress moving about. There was something fragile in the way she carried herself, a soft hesitance that made the waitress watch over her with gentle curiosity. The waitress started to notice small things about the girl. She watched how the girl struggled to choose her order, sometimes pointing to the pastries hesitantly, as if unsure which one she liked. Other times, the girl would stare at the menu for several minutes, unsure how to ask for what she wanted. It wasn't because she couldn't speak. It was something deeper, a shyness that seemed to close her off from the world. The waitress felt a pull, a desire to make her mornings a little easier, a little brighter. So, the next morning the waitress did something small but meaningful. When the girl came in, she greeted her warmly, with a soft smile and a nod. Then, quietly, she suggested a pastry she thought the girl might like. "The chocolate croissant is fresh today," she said gently. The girl blinked, a little startled by the kindness, but then nodded slowly. It was a small victory, but the waitress felt a quiet satisfaction. The girl had accepted her help without feeling embarrassed or pressured. Days turned into weeks, and the routine continued. Every morning, the girl arrived, and every morning, the waitress quietly guided her. Sometimes it was about choosing what to eat. Other times it was about making conversation. The girl would start with short answers, almost whispers, and gradually began to respond with more words. The waitress never pushed, never rushed. She simply offered a kind presence, an anchor in the girl's uncertain mornings. There was a sense of trust slowly building, fragile yet steady, like a small plant growing under careful attention. The cafe itself became a backdrop to their growing bond. The smell of fresh coffee, the soft clinking of cups, and the warm light all contributed to a feeling of calm. Other patrons might come and go, laughing or chatting, but in that corner, a quiet world existed where the girl could feel safe. She didn't have to speak loudly or assert herself. She could simply exist, and the waitress's quiet support made that possible. One morning, the girl arrived looking particularly nervous. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her notebook, and she seemed lost in thought. The waitress noticed immediately and approached with gentle steps. "Would you like me to help you with the menu today?" she asked softly. The girl looked up, her eyes wide and uncertain, but then nodded. The waitress suggested a few options, explaining them briefly and with care, and the girl finally made a choice. She smiled ever so slightly, a tiny crack in her quiet shell, and the waitress felt a warmth spread through her chest. Moments like these were small, but they were victories of human connection, fragile and precious. As the days passed, the waitress learned more about the girl, not through direct conversation but through observation. She noticed how the girl carefully arranged her notebook and pen, how she sometimes doodled little pictures, and how her eyes would light up at certain pastries or drinks. The girl had interests and thoughts that she didn't easily share, but the waitress respected that silence, never prying, always waiting for the girl to open up on her own terms. Other staff at the cafe occasionally remarked on the girl, wondering why she always came alone, why she seemed so reserved. But the waitress understood something they did not. Sometimes, quiet people needed a safe space, a familiar presence, and patience more than conversation. The girl's silence was not emptiness. It was depth, and the waitress had the privilege of witnessing it unfold slowly, like a delicate flower in the morning sun. One particular morning, the cafe was busier than usual. A group of people laughed loudly at one table, and the barista struggled with a jammed espresso machine. Amid the chaos, the quiet girl arrived, clutching her notebook tightly. She seemed almost frozen, her eyes scanning the bustling room. The waitress moved quickly to her side, offering a reassuring smile. "Would you like to sit over here?" she suggested, pointing to a quieter corner. The girl's shoulders relaxed slightly, and she followed, grateful for the gentle guidance. It was a small gesture, but to the girl it meant the world. She could face the chaos of the morning because she wasn't alone. As time went on, their bond became unspoken but unmistakable. The waitress's support became a comforting constant, and the girl's quiet presence became familiar and warm. It was a relationship built on small acts of kindness, patience, and understanding. No words were wasted. Every gesture, every glance, every smile carried meaning. The waitress learned that true care was often silent, and the girl learned that trust could be built without force, in quiet, gentle steps. Even on mornings when the girl arrived looking downcast or anxious, the waitress knew just what to do. Sometimes it was simply offering a pastry she liked, sometimes it was a quiet word of encouragement, and sometimes it was just being there, a steady presence in the corner of the cafe. These moments, seemingly ordinary, were transformative. They created a safe harbor for the girl, a place where she could breathe, observe, and grow in confidence, little by little. The bond between them was subtle, almost invisible to anyone else in the cafe, yet it was strong. The waitress took pride not in grand gestures, but in the small victories, a smile, a nod, a fleeting moment of recognition. She understood that kindness could change a life quietly, without fanfare, without expectation, and the girl responded in ways that were delicate but real. And so, every morning the cycle continued. The cafe bustled around them. Customers came and went, orders were taken and served. But in one quiet corner, a story of patience, empathy, and quiet courage was unfolding. The waitress assisted the quiet girl, and in doing so, she created a space where trust, safety, and gentle friendship could bloom. It was a story of small beginnings, a tale that would eventually lead to unexpected moments and revelations. But for now, it was simply the beauty of two people connecting in a world that often rushed past them. The mornings were their own, filled with warmth, understanding, and the quiet magic of human kindness. As the mornings passed, the quiet girl began to show small signs of change. The waitress noticed them first, subtle shifts in the way she moved, the way she looked around, and the tiny smiles that would sometimes appear on her face. It was as if the girl was slowly stepping out of her shell, though very cautiously. The waitress felt a quiet joy in witnessing this transformation, knowing that her small acts of care and attention were helping the girl feel more comfortable in the world around her. One morning, the girl lingered longer than usual, her notebook open in front of her but her attention elsewhere. She watched the other patrons, curious but hesitant. The waitress approached gently, carrying a cup of hot chocolate, and placed it in front of her. "I thought you might like this today," she said softly. The girl looked up, her eyes meeting the waitress's for the first time with a spark of gratitude. She nodded, a shy but genuine acknowledgement, and took a careful sip. The warmth of the drink seemed to mirror the warmth she felt from the kindness offered without expectation. Over the next few weeks, the girl began to initiate small conversations. At first, it was just a few words here and there, questions about the pastries or comments on the weather. The waitress listened patiently, responding with gentle encouragement, never rushing, never pushing. She understood that trust had to be earned slowly, that the girl needed time to feel safe. And the girl did. She started to share little details about her life, her favorite kinds of books, the way she liked to sketch in her notebook, and sometimes even stories from her past that she hadn't shared with anyone else. It was during one of these quiet mornings that the waitress realized the depth of the girl's intelligence and creativity. She watched the sketches in the notebook, intricate drawings of places the girl had never been, imagined scenes, and delicate patterns that showed a careful, thoughtful mind. The waitress felt a swell of admiration. This girl, who had seemed so fragile and timid, had a rich inner world that few would ever notice without patient observation. It made her commitment to helping her feel more meaningful. The cafe became a haven not just for the girl but for the waitress as well. She found herself looking forward to these mornings, not just as part of her job, but as a chance to witness the quiet growth of someone she cared for. There was a bond forming, subtle and unspoken, that brought warmth to both of their lives. Even when the cafe was busy and noisy, the small corner they shared remained a place of calm. The girl knew that she could rely on the waitress, and the waitress knew that her presence made a difference. One day, the girl arrived looking nervous and uneasy. She fidgeted with her notebook, her hands trembling slightly. The waitress immediately noticed and approached with care, offering a gentle smile. "Would you like to sit in your usual spot?" she asked softly. The girl nodded, grateful for the quiet support. The waitress helped her settle in, arranging the notebook and a cup of tea in front of her, and stayed nearby, giving her space but remaining a steady presence. In those moments, the girl felt a sense of safety she had rarely experienced before. As their bond deepened, the girl began to show more confidence in small ways. She would order her pastries without hesitation, sometimes even experimenting with new choices. She started to smile more openly, sometimes laughing quietly at a small joke or a friendly comment from the waitress. It was clear that she was learning to trust the world outside her own quiet space, and the waitress felt proud to be part of that growth. Every small step mattered. Every smile was a victory. The other staff and customers sometimes noticed the girl's transformation, though they did not understand the depth of it. Some admired her courage, others simply saw a young girl becoming more comfortable in her surroundings. But the waitress knew that these changes were not just about the cafe or the pastries. They were about human connection, about someone showing kindness without expecting anything in return. It was about creating a safe space where someone could slowly, gently become themselves. One morning, the girl surprised the waitress by speaking more than usual. She asked about a pastry she had never tried before, hesitating slightly, then smiling as she took a small bite. "It's really good," she said softly, looking up. The waitress returned the smile, her heart warmed by the trust and honesty in that simple comment. It was a small moment, yet it carried immense significance. The girl was learning to express herself, to share her thoughts and feelings, and the waitress was honored to witness it. There were also moments of quiet companionship, times when neither of them spoke much, but their presence was enough. The girl would sketch while the waitress worked nearby, and they would exchange occasional glances that spoke volumes. These silent exchanges created a sense of understanding that words could not capture. It was a bond built on patience, empathy, and the gentle assurance that someone cared. Sometimes, the girl would confide little worries, things that weighed on her mind. The waitress listened without judgment, offering gentle guidance or simply a comforting presence. She never pushed for more than the girl was willing to share, understanding that the process of opening up could not be rushed. Over time, the girl began to trust not just the waitress but herself, gaining confidence in her ability to navigate the world with support and understanding. The bond between them also brought subtle changes to the waitress. She found herself more observant, more patient, and more appreciative of the small moments in life. The girl's quiet courage and thoughtful nature inspired her to approach her own life with greater empathy and awareness. Their mornings together became a shared journey of growth, one that enriched both of their lives in ways that were profound yet understated. One particularly rainy morning, the girl arrived looking downcast. Her notebook was clutched tightly to her chest, and her eyes were focused on the floor. The waitress noticed immediately and guided her to their usual spot, offering a warm cup of tea and a reassuring smile. "It's okay to have a rough morning," she said softly. The girl looked up, a hint of relief in her eyes. The waitress stayed close, giving her the comfort of steady presence, and slowly, the girl began to relax. The rain outside mirrored the challenges in her mind, but inside the cafe, she found a haven. As days turned into weeks, the girl's confidence continued to grow. She began to engage with other customers, offering polite greetings and even small smiles. She experimented with new pastries, asked questions about the cafe, and occasionally shared a bit about her sketches with the waitress. Each step, no matter how small, was a testament to the trust and care that had been nurtured over countless mornings. The waitress understood that true change came not from grand gestures, but from consistent, gentle support. The cafe itself became a witness to this quiet transformation. The clinking of cups, the aroma of coffee, and the warm sunlight created a backdrop for a story of human connection and compassion. Patrons came and went, often unaware of the subtle bond forming in the corner, but the waitress and the girl knew. They had created a space where patience, empathy, and quiet encouragement could flourish. One morning, the girl surprised the waitress with a small drawing. It was a sketch of the cafe, with the two of them in the corner, surrounded by the warmth of the morning sun. She handed it to the waitress shyly, her eyes bright with pride. The waitress accepted it with a smile, touched by the gesture. It was a symbol of trust, of recognition, and of the bond that had grown between them. The girl was no longer just quiet and hesitant. She was thoughtful, expressive, and confident in her own small way. The days continued, each morning reinforcing the connection they shared. The girl's growth was subtle but undeniable. She began to take initiative, choosing her pastries, engaging in small conversations, and expressing herself through her sketches. The waitress continued to offer guidance and support, always gentle, always patient. Understanding that their journey together was about more than just the cafe. It was about creating a safe space for trust, growth, and human connection. In those mornings, filled with warmth, quiet laughter, and the aroma of coffee, a remarkable transformation was taking place. The girl was learning to step out of her shell, to trust, and to express herself. The waitress was learning the power of patience, empathy, and the profound impact of small, consistent acts of kindness. Together, they created a story of growth, understanding, and the quiet beauty of human connection, one morning at a time. The mornings at the cafe continued with their gentle rhythm, but something was beginning to change in the quiet girl. She was no longer just a timid observer in the corner. She started showing subtle signs of curiosity about the world outside her own small routines. The waitress noticed how she lingered longer over her sketches, drawing not just the things she saw, but the things she imagined. The lines on the paper reflected her thoughts and dreams, a silent storytelling that gradually grew more vivid each day. Other customers started to notice that the girl seemed different. She greeted the staff with small, polite nods, and sometimes even exchanged quiet words with a few regulars. But it was the bond with the waitress that remained her anchor. The waitress could see the girl's nervousness flare at moments, especially when the cafe became busy or loud, and she always stayed nearby, giving reassurance through her presence rather than words. Sometimes the girl would glance up, meeting the waitress's eyes, and in that look, there was comfort, trust, and a small spark of courage. One morning, the girl arrived clutching her notebook a little tighter than usual. She seemed preoccupied, and her eyes darted around the cafe, noticing things she had not before. The way the sunlight reflected off the tables, the way the barista wiped down the counter, and the laughter of customers chatting. She seemed to take in more details, more than just her corner of the world, as if seeing the cafe for the first time through curious eyes. The waitress noticed the change and smiled softly, realizing that the girl was starting to explore her environment in small ways, letting herself be present without fear. As the weeks went by, small routines started to evolve. The girl began experimenting with her choices at the cafe, sometimes ordering pastries she had never tried before, sometimes asking questions about the drinks or the ingredients. Each choice was a tiny act of bravery, a step toward independence. The waitress encouraged these steps subtly, offering suggestions but never pressuring. She understood that growth happened gently, and that confidence could not be forced. The girl's courage was emerging from within, nurtured by the consistency of kindness. The girl's sketches began to tell stories that went beyond the cafe. She drew people she imagined walking the streets, animals she imagined seeing, and places she wished to visit. The waitress sometimes peeked at the drawings when the girl left the notebook open on the table, admiring the imagination and care in each line. There was a depth to the girl's creativity, a sensitivity and thoughtfulness that spoke of experiences and observations that were rarely shared aloud. It was clear to the waitress that the girl's world was rich and complex, even if she often remained quiet. Some days, the girl would arrive looking nervous or unsure, and the waitress could sense the tension in her movements. On those mornings, she would gently guide her to their usual spot, sometimes offering a warm drink or a quiet word of reassurance. The girl would take a deep breath, relax her shoulders, and slowly regain composure. It was a rhythm they had developed, a dance of understanding that required patience and attention. In these moments, the girl learned that it was okay to feel uncertain, that support did not mean judgment, and that she could trust someone to be there when she needed it. The bond between them also allowed the girl to practice small acts of bravery in other ways. She started observing the cafe more actively, noticing details she had previously ignored. She began to ask questions about how things worked, how pastries were made, or how drinks were prepared. Each question, simple as it was, reflected her growing confidence and willingness to engage. The waitress encouraged this curiosity, answering patiently and even demonstrating how some of the tasks were done when she had a moment. The girl watched intently, her eyes lighting up with interest and excitement, a stark contrast to the hesitant demeanor she had once displayed. On a particularly quiet morning, the girl brought in a small sketch she had completed at home. It was a detailed drawing of the cafe, the tables, the sunlight streaming through the windows, and a little figure in the corner that resembled her. She handed it to the waitress with a shy smile. The waitress accepted it with warmth, impressed by the attention to detail and the sense of perspective in the drawing. The gesture was more than a gift. It was an expression of trust, a silent way of saying that the girl felt comfortable enough to share a piece of her inner world. It was a milestone, showing that the bond they shared had grown into something meaningful and mutual. The girl's curiosity also extended to the other people around her. She would sometimes observe other customers quietly, noticing patterns in their behavior, the way they interacted, and the small nuances of human expression. The waitress could see her taking mental notes, learning from the world around her. These observations helped her feel more connected, more confident in navigating the space outside her small corner. It was a gradual process, but each day brought small victories. Each day allowed her to step a little further into life. The waitress also began to notice changes in the way the girl expressed herself verbally. She started using more words when speaking, forming sentences that reflected her thoughts more clearly. Even when she was quiet, the words she chose were deliberate, thoughtful, and meaningful. There was a patience in her voice, a careful consideration that reflected the depth of her thinking. The waitress admired this quality, recognizing that the girl's quiet nature was not a weakness but a strength, allowing her to observe, reflect, and understand the world in ways that others might overlook. One morning, the girl seemed particularly reflective. She lingered over her tea, staring out the window at the bustling street, lost in thought. The waitress watched her silently, respecting her space, knowing that sometimes the best support was simply being present. The girl finally turned to the waitress, her eyes bright with an unspoken question, and for the first time, she asked about the waitress's own experiences and opinions. It was a small moment, but it marked a turning point. The girl was beginning to engage in dialogue, to bridge the gap between her inner world and the world around her. The cafe continued to be their shared sanctuary, a place where growth, trust, and curiosity could flourish. The girl learned that it was possible to explore, to ask questions, and to take risks in a safe environment. The waitress learned that patience, gentle guidance, and empathy could create profound change in someone's life. Together, they nurtured a bond that was quiet yet powerful, subtle yet transformative. As the girl became more comfortable, she started initiating small gestures of connection. Sometimes she would leave her notebook open with a sketch or a note, a silent message of gratitude. Sometimes she would ask questions about the cafe's routines or the pastries, showing interest and engagement. Each gesture, small as it was, reflected her growing trust and her willingness to connect with others. The waitress recognized these moments as signs of progress, evidence that the girl's quiet courage was blossoming into confidence and self-expression. There were mornings when challenges arose. Unexpected crowds, loud conversations, or spills. But the girl faced them with increasing composure. She had learned from the waitress that the world could be navigated gently, that mistakes were part of learning, and that support was available when needed. These lessons, though simple, were profound, helping her develop resilience and independence while maintaining her gentle, thoughtful nature. The girl also began to explore her creativity more boldly. She experimented with new sketching techniques, different perspectives, and imaginative scenarios that extended beyond the cafe. The waitress encouraged this exploration, praising her efforts and showing genuine interest in her work. The girl's confidence in her abilities grew, and with it, her willingness to share her thoughts and ideas. Each sketch, each question, each smile was a testament to the bond they had cultivated. A bond built on trust, patience, and the quiet power of human kindness. As their mornings together unfolded, it became clear that this was a story of gradual, meaningful transformation. The girl was learning to trust, to express herself, and to engage with the world beyond her small corner. The waitress was witnessing the beauty of patience, empathy, and consistent support. Their shared experiences were small but significant, shaping a path of growth that neither had anticipated fully at the beginning. In these quiet mornings, filled with the aroma of coffee, the gentle hum of conversation, and the soft light filtering through the windows, a story of human connection and transformation was taking shape. The girl was stepping out of her shell, learning to navigate the world with courage and curiosity. The waitress was providing guidance, reassurance, and a steady presence that allowed the girl to flourish. Together, they created a narrative of subtle but profound change, a story that demonstrated the quiet power of empathy, patience, and consistent care. The girl's journey was far from over, but each morning brought new opportunities, new discoveries, and new steps forward. She was learning to trust herself, to engage with others, and to express her thoughts and creativity with confidence. The waitress was there every step of the way, a constant source of support, encouragement, and understanding. Their bond, unspoken yet powerful, was a testament to the impact that one person's kindness can have on another, shaping a life quietly but profoundly, one morning at a time. The quiet mornings at the cafe had become a comforting routine for both the waitress and the girl, but a sense of anticipation began to grow in the air. The girl seemed more alert, more aware of her surroundings, and there were subtle changes in her demeanor that the waitress could not ignore. She noticed the girl glancing at the door more often, watching people come in and out, and occasionally holding herself a little straighter. There was a hint of something unspoken in those moments, a story that the girl was keeping close to her heart. One morning, as the cafe slowly filled with customers, the girl arrived looking slightly uneasy. She clutched her notebook tightly and paused at the entrance, her eyes scanning the room. The waitress approached as usual, greeting her with a warm smile. "Would you like to sit in your usual spot?" she asked gently. The girl nodded, but her fingers trembled slightly as she placed her notebook on the table. The waitress sensed that something was different this morning, a shift in the usual rhythm of their routine. She stayed close, a reassuring presence, ready to provide comfort if needed. As the morning went on, small details began to reveal themselves. The girl's gaze kept flickering toward the door, and she seemed tense, almost waiting for someone. The waitress noticed, but she said nothing, understanding that the girl would reveal what she needed to in her own time. She continued to serve drinks and pastries, offering quiet smiles and gentle guidance, maintaining a sense of normalcy amidst the subtle tension that was beginning to build. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. The girl became more anxious in the mornings, frequently checking the entrance and fidgeting with her notebook. The waitress offered comfort in small ways, placing a warm cup of tea in front of her, suggesting a pastry she might enjoy, and simply staying nearby as a steady presence. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a bond that allowed the girl to feel safe even when the world outside seemed uncertain. One morning, the girl finally spoke, her voice quiet but determined. "I think someone is coming for me today," she said softly, her eyes wide with a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. The waitress nodded, maintaining a calm demeanor. "Then we will face it together," she said gently, her tone filled with reassurance. The girl seemed to draw strength from the words, and although she was still nervous, she felt less alone. It was a moment that highlighted the depth of their connection, built over weeks of patience, trust, and quiet understanding. As the day progressed, the cafe buzzed with activity, but the girl remained focused on the entrance. She sat upright in her usual corner, clutching her notebook, and occasionally glancing at the waitress for reassurance. The waitress stayed close, ready to provide comfort without intrusion. She noticed the girl's nervous energy, the way her hands trembled slightly as she sipped her tea, and the way her eyes darted to the door at every sound. It was a morning filled with quiet tension, a waiting game that neither of them could control, yet both were determined to face together. Then the moment came. The door opened, and a tall, imposing figure stepped inside, followed closely by 4 men in plain but professional attire. The waitress instinctively recognized them as bodyguards, their eyes scanning the cafe with careful attention. The girl's hands tightened around her notebook, and she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The waitress moved slightly closer, a silent gesture of support. She could see the fear and uncertainty in the girl's eyes, but also a flicker of recognition and relief. The man at the front, clearly authoritative and composed, scanned the cafe until his gaze fell on the girl. He approached her table with careful steps, the bodyguards flanking him closely. The girl stood, clutching her notebook to her chest, and the waitress felt a surge of protectiveness and empathy. She stayed nearby, ready to offer comfort, her presence a silent reminder that the girl was not alone. The atmosphere was tense but not hostile, a moment of anticipation and curiosity that hung in the air like a delicate thread. The girl's father spoke first, his voice calm but commanding. "I've come for you," he said, his eyes softening slightly as he looked at his daughter. She nodded, a mixture of relief and hesitation in her expression. The waitress noticed how the girl's shoulders relaxed slightly, as if the presence of someone familiar and protective was reassuring, even amidst the tension of the moment. The bodyguards maintained a respectful distance, their eyes alert but non-threatening, creating a perimeter of safety without intruding on the interaction. The waitress observed the exchange quietly, understanding the significance of the moment. This was a turning point, a bridge between the girl's quiet life in the cafe and the world of protection and privilege she had kept separate. She could see the relief in the girl's eyes, the comfort of having someone she trusted finally arrive, and she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The weeks of patient support, the gentle encouragement, and the quiet presence she had provided had prepared the girl to face this moment with courage. As the father knelt slightly to speak to his daughter, the waitress remained nearby, offering a reassuring smile. The girl took a deep breath, then turned briefly to the waitress, her eyes conveying gratitude and warmth. It was a silent acknowledgement of the bond they had shared, a recognition of the trust and care that had helped her navigate the challenges of the past weeks. The waitress nodded, understanding the unspoken message, and remained a steady presence as the father guided his daughter toward the door. The cafe seemed to hold its breath as the moment unfolded. Other patrons observed with quiet curiosity, sensing the importance of the interaction without understanding the depth of the connection. The girl's nervousness was palpable, but it was tempered by the strength she drew from both her father's presence and the supportive bond with the waitress. It was a delicate balance, a mix of fear, relief, and anticipation that created a tension filled with emotion and human connection. The waitress continued to watch as the girl and her father prepared to leave. She felt a mixture of pride and sadness, knowing that the routine they had shared would change, that the mornings of quiet companionship would evolve into something different. Yet, she also felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that her patient support had allowed the girl to face this moment with confidence and courage. It was a reminder of the profound impact that empathy, kindness, and gentle guidance could have on someone's life. As the father and the girl moved toward the exit, the waitress offered a final, warm smile. The girl looked back briefly, her eyes shining with gratitude and recognition, a silent message that spoke volumes. The bodyguards remained attentive but unobtrusive, allowing the interaction to unfold naturally. The cafe resumed its usual rhythm, but the memory of that morning lingered, a quiet testament to the power of human connection and the transformative effect of consistent, patient care. In the days that followed, the atmosphere of the cafe shifted subtly. The absence of the girl's quiet presence was noticeable, a reminder of the bond that had been formed and the moments of growth that had occurred. The waitress reflected on the journey they had shared, the small victories, and the milestones of courage and trust that had defined their mornings. She understood that life was a series of moments, each one building on the last, and that her role had been to provide a safe space for growth, understanding, and confidence. The experience also deepened the waitress's understanding of human resilience and the importance of support. She realized that even the smallest acts of kindness, the quiet gestures of encouragement, and the consistent presence of someone who cares could have a profound impact on another person's life. The girl's transformation, her growing confidence, and her ability to face her father with courage were testaments to the strength that could emerge from empathy and patience. Though the girl was now leaving the cafe with her father and the bodyguards, the bond they had formed was not lost. It remained as a quiet, enduring memory, a connection that had shaped both of their lives in meaningful ways. The waitress understood that this chapter was a turning point, a moment where the girl's quiet courage and the gentle support she had received converged to create a lasting impact. The mornings they had shared, filled with trust, patience, and understanding, would remain a part of both of their stories, a reminder of the power of human kindness and connection. After the father and his 4 bodyguards arrived at the cafe, the quiet girl felt a mix of emotions: relief, nervousness, and a touch of excitement. She had spent weeks preparing herself, growing more confident and curious under the patient guidance of the waitress. Now, facing a world that had always seemed distant and protected, she felt both apprehensive and ready. The waitress stayed nearby, a quiet presence that reminded the girl that she was not alone, that support and understanding were still with her even as her life began to change. The father knelt slightly to speak with his daughter, his voice calm but firm. "I know it has been difficult, but I am proud of how you have handled everything," he said. The girl nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. She glanced at the waitress, who offered a gentle smile and a reassuring nod. That silent gesture spoke volumes. It said that courage was not the absence of fear, but the strength to move forward with trust and support. The father guided his daughter toward the door, the bodyguards flanking them to provide a sense of safety and order. The waitress watched as the girl took a deep breath, then stepped confidently forward. Each step seemed lighter than the last, as though the weeks of quiet support had given her the strength to face new challenges. The cafe, once a sanctuary of daily routine and small victories, now became a launching point for a new chapter in the girl's life. As they prepared to leave, the girl turned back briefly to the waitress. Her eyes held a mixture of gratitude, recognition, and warmth. In that brief glance, the waitress saw the culmination of all the mornings they had shared, the small gestures, the quiet guidance, and the patient support that had allowed the girl to grow. It was a moment of silent connection, a bond that would endure even as circumstances changed. The waitress felt a wave of emotion, a mixture of pride, joy, and a quiet satisfaction in knowing that her efforts had made a real difference. Once the girl and her father had exited the cafe, a gentle hush seemed to fall over the space. The other patrons, who had observed the interaction with curiosity, returned to their own routines, but the significance of the moment lingered in the air. The waitress resumed her work, but her mind reflected on the journey that had led to this point. She thought about the small victories, the quiet triumphs, and the profound impact of patient kindness. Every smile, every word of encouragement, every gentle gesture had contributed to this moment of growth and courage. In the days that followed, the cafe felt different. The girl's corner remained empty, a subtle reminder of the bond that had been nurtured there. The waitress reflected on the transformation she had witnessed. The shy, timid girl who had once clutched her notebook nervously was now capable of facing the world with confidence and curiosity. It was a testament to the power of human connection, empathy, and consistent support. The waitress understood that even small acts of kindness could ripple outward, shaping lives in ways that might never be fully seen or understood. The girl's departure also reinforced the importance of patience and trust in relationships. The waitress had never rushed, never forced interaction, and never expected immediate results. Instead, she offered consistent presence and gentle guidance, allowing the girl to grow at her own pace. This approach had created a safe environment where confidence could emerge naturally, proving that true support is measured not by grand gestures but by enduring patience and understanding. Weeks turned into months, and though the girl no longer visited the cafe every morning, the bond they had formed continued to influence both of their lives. The waitress found herself more attentive, more compassionate, and more appreciative of the small moments that often go unnoticed. She recognized the quiet strength in others and understood that meaningful connections could flourish in unexpected ways. The girl, too, carried the lessons she had learned: the courage to face challenges, the ability to trust, and the understanding that kindness and patience could shape her journey. The impact of their shared mornings was evident in subtle ways. The girl began to engage more confidently with the world, exploring new experiences and embracing opportunities with a sense of self-assurance she had not possessed before. She remembered the patience and care the waitress had shown, and it guided her interactions with others, inspiring empathy and understanding in her own way. The lessons learned in the quiet cafe had become tools for navigating life, shaping her character and approach to the world around her. The waitress, too, found joy in reflecting on their journey. She understood that the connection they had shared was a rare and meaningful one, built on trust, empathy, and consistent care. It reminded her of the profound effect one person's presence and patience can have on another. The small acts of support, the gentle encouragement, and the quiet attentiveness had created a ripple of positive change that extended far beyond the walls of the cafe. It was a lesson in the power of human kindness, the kind that leaves a lasting mark on someone's life. One afternoon, months after the girl's departure, the waitress received a small envelope at the cafe. Inside was a simple note from the girl, expressing gratitude and sharing a few thoughts about how much the mornings together had meant. The words were heartfelt, sincere, and filled with warmth. The waitress read the note carefully, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment and pride. It was a tangible reminder of the bond they had formed and the impact of patient, consistent kindness. The girl wrote about the courage she had found, the confidence she had gained, and the lessons she had carried into her life. She spoke of the sense of safety and trust she had felt in the cafe, and how it had given her the strength to face challenges she had once found overwhelming. The waitress felt a profound connection through the words, realizing that the mornings they had shared had created a foundation for growth, resilience, and self-assurance. The story of the quiet girl and the waitress became a quiet legend among the cafe staff and some regular patrons. It was a testament to the power of human connection and the transformative potential of empathy, patience, and gentle guidance. The lessons from their shared mornings served as inspiration, reminding everyone that even the smallest acts of kindness could have lasting effects on someone's life. The waitress continued her work at the cafe, carrying forward the lessons and experiences from her time with the girl. She approached each interaction with greater patience and understanding, recognizing the unique value of empathy and the profound impact of consistent support. She understood that meaningful relationships often develop slowly, through observation, care, and small gestures that accumulate into trust and connection. Meanwhile, the girl embraced her life with renewed confidence and curiosity. She faced challenges with courage, explored new experiences, and engaged with others in ways that reflected the patience and care she had received. The bond she had shared with the waitress continued to influence her decisions, interactions, and approach to life. It became a quiet but powerful source of strength, guiding her as she navigated the world with resilience and understanding. In the end, the story of the waitress and the quiet girl was not about grand gestures or dramatic events. It was about the quiet, consistent acts of kindness that build trust, nurture confidence, and transform lives. It was about the patience to allow someone to grow at their own pace, the empathy to understand their fears and challenges, and the presence to offer support without expectation. It was a story of human connection, of growth, and of the lasting impact of gentle guidance. As the cafe continued its daily rhythm, the memory of the quiet girl remained a source of inspiration. It reminded everyone that even in the simplest of places, in the quiet moments of daily life, profound connections could be formed. The waitress carried the lessons forward, applying them to her work, her interactions, and her understanding of others. The girl carried the confidence, courage, and trust she had gained, allowing it to shape her journey and her view of the world. Their story became a testament to the power of empathy, patience, and consistent support. It illustrated that true impact often comes not from dramatic actions, but from the quiet, persistent presence of someone who cares. The mornings they shared had created a foundation for growth, understanding, and human connection that would endure far beyond the walls of the cafe. And though the girl had moved on to face the world with her father and her guardians, the bond they had formed remained a lasting testament to the quiet, transformative power of kindness and support.